It's a very, very familiar passage of scripture, and it's talking about two sisters. So it's in Luke 10:38 through 41. Everybody knows this scripture. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all of the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Mary simply wanted to please Jesus. That's all she wanted. Nothing else mattered. There was nothing that could distract her from sitting at the Master's feet. She wanted to please Jesus. She wanted to listen to him. She wanted to learn from him. She wanted to be loved by him. Nothing else at that moment mattered but sitting at the feet of Jesus. She was resting in him. She wanted to please him. Now Martha, on the other hand, she loved Jesus as well, but there was something different about Martha. See, Martha was known in the community for her ability to be hospitable and serve her guests. This is what she was known as in the community. She was probably the envy of many women in the community because Martha could keep her house. Her house was clean. She kept it spotless. She probably had the modern day Better Homes and Garden, if you will. She kept her house clean because when guests came by her house, she wanted to present a certain way. She wanted to look a certain way. Martha, she wanted to provide Jesus a resting place by meeting his physical needs. That was her purpose. She wanted to provide a resting place for Jesus by meeting his physical needs. She wanted to provide a place of comfort, a resting place from a long journey, great food, and amazing hospitality. Martha wanted to do great things for Jesus. She wanted to do great things for Jesus. But she didn't want to allow him to do great things in her because she was so concerned about meeting his physical needs and not resting at his feet. She wanted to look a certain way. She wanted her house to present a certain way. She wasn't concerned at the moment about resting at his feet. She wanted to meet his physical need. This had become Martha's identity. This had become her identity. She was so wrapped up in what she was doing that she could not rest at Jesus' feet. How many opportunities have we missed resting at Jesus' feet? How many opportunities have we missed when we had those moments that we could sit at the Master's feet, but we were so busy. We were so busy wanting to serve the pastor. We were so busy wanting to make sure things in the church. And don't get me wrong, all those things are wonderful. And God, He calls us to do those things. But how many opportunities have we missed to just rest at the feet of Jesus and just learn from him and be loved by him? We've been so busy trying to perform. Martha had taken on a spirit of performance. Look at me, God. Look at what I'm doing for you. Look at what I'm doing for you, God. Mary's not doing anything, but look at what I'm doing for you, God. Instead of resting at his feet, she wanted to perform. And all God wanted from her was Come let me change you. Come let me do a work in you. Come let me minister to you.
You look at Martha, she's a moving target. Right, Dale?
Yes.
She's a moving target. It's hard for God to get to us if we're a moving target. Sorry, yeah, we'll hang it like that. Yeah. Yes. So she's a moving target. It's hard for God to get to you when you're always moving. And here's the thing about Martha. She had a definition that was not God's definition of selfishness. Her definition of selfishness was what Mary was doing. Martha was saying, she's not doing what I'm doing, therefore she's selfish. And I'm selfless. Do you see me over here being selfless, and she's over there being selfish? But what she's not realizing is something so important. There is nothing we can do for God until God has first done it in us. And here's the challenge is, some of us have convinced ourselves that God has done it in us when He has not. Just because people have done things in you, just because you have knowledge, just because you know some things, doesn't mean God has done it in you.
That's right.
It's like Tamika, you couldn't have shared that word you shared this morning and it been anointed if God hadn't first crushed you. The reason that was so powerful this morning is because of what you've been through in this last season where you were crushed. So because you were crushed, you're qualified to tell us to endure, because you had to endure absolute difficulty and pain. And some of us are dealing with difficulty and pain, but some of us, we avoid it. And yet we don't realize there's just a point you probably reached where you're like, I can't do anything about this anymore, so I'm just going to drop at the feet of Jesus and let Him do it because I can't do it anymore. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So as He's talking about Martha, I would say this. Every one of us in this room is Martha and Mary. Hear what I'm saying? Because what we tend to do when we hear this story is say, yeah, we look across the room and we go, yeah, she's kind of a Mary. And we look at ourselves and we say, I'm kind of a Mary or I'm kind of a Martha. And the accusation of Martha was what? She's not doing anything. That was the accusation Martha had against Mary. She's not doing anything. Right? And yet, we kind of talked about that. I want you to go ahead. That's absolutely not true.
No, it's not true. It's so funny because, Pastor asked me to talk about this week. And I so echo what you said to this week, because oftentimes when God wants you to talk about something, He'll allow the very thing that He wants you to speak on and minister on to happen to you. And so this last week was just a week of distractions. So many distractions that I went through this week. And I oftentimes found myself just really in a place of there were times of anger, there were times of frustration, there were times of confusion. And it was literally after Pastor had talked to me about this when all of this started happening. And it was like everything was just bombarding me at one time. And there was a period of time where I just had to stop and say, you know what? This is all distractions. These are all things that are coming to take my mind from taking my eyes off of you, God, and what you want to say in this moment. These are all things that are happening right now. And when I said that, the things kept coming. They didn't stop. And I was getting frustrated, and I was angry, and I was feeling alone, and I was just like, God, why? And as I started reading this, I started to get an understanding of you can't be effective in what God is trying to bring across to His people unless He takes you through it.
Amen. Come on.
And so I had to learn about distractions and how they come. And it can be the most simple distraction. Something at work, something with your kids, anything. It can be anything that comes to distract. the enemy spoke a word to Eve. Just spoke a word to her, which caused her focus to shift just a little bit to where she began to doubt God. And we know what happened. We know what happened in the story with that. But it was a distraction. It was a subtle distraction. Did God say? And it caused her mind to now begin to wonder whether God said this or not. And for me, that happened this week where things were just bombarding me. And so when I got into this and really reading about how God just wants me to learn rest in him and not performance in him. And this is something, I don't speak this not having lived this. I don't speak this not having lived this. So this is something that even to this moment, I am dealing with. I am constantly learning how to rest in God and not be moved by the things that I see and the things that I hear. Oh God, thank you. Not being moved by the things that I see. And sometimes it's so difficult.
Oh, yeah, we're here.
Sometimes it's so hard. Sometimes you just want to give up. Sometimes you just want to throw in the towel and say, forget it. God, I've served you all of my life. And this is what's happening now. God, how can I rest in you?
Yes, Lord.
How can I rest in you, God, when I don't even trust you?
Come on.
How can I believe, God, that your word is true when all of my experiences have been nothing but lies? Jesus. God wants to give us rest. God wants to give us rest.
Thank you, Jesus.
He wants us just to sit at his feet like Mary and allow him to love on us.
Thank you, Jesus.
Allow him to change us.
Which is harder to do?
It's so hard.
Let me ask you guys, which, can you turn that right one down just a little bit? She's a little hot. Which one is harder to do? Let's be honest. Is it harder to stop and sit at his feet, or is it harder to just clean the house and be ready for him to come?
God.
Come on, let's
Run
go.
neck and
Everybody
neck.
tell us yourself.
They run neck and neck.
That hands down, it's harder to sit and rest with God.
Yeah.
It's easier for us to run around. And some of us in this room, we have to always have our house so perfect. We have to have everything so presented. And what the thing is I'm going to give you two nuggets. I get the luxury of listening to this guy preach and just ask for revelation while he's talking. So I'll give you two. There's a problem. Write this down. The problem was that Martha thought that the house was the destination. Mary knew she was. I'm going to say that again. The problem is that Martha thought the house was the destination. And Mary knew she was.
Amen.
Yes.
Hear what I'm saying? The second problem is Martha thought holiness was making everything look good and be clean. Come on, guys, we grew up in this.
Yes.
We grew up in this. If everything looks clean, that's what Jesus said. He said, you are whitewashed sepulchres, full of dead men's bones. Your life looks so neat and clean, but your motives, the way you talk to people, the way you treat your spouses, the way you behave, how you act when the cup is tipped, what comes out of you is toa.
From the floor.
And Mary knew the only answer to holiness was her.
Amen.
And this is a love issue because Martha doesn't realize she's truly the destination and she's the object of his love. Martha doesn't, but Mary knows it. Mary just takes the risk to believe that she is the object of God's affection. And there's nothing that can be done until God does it in her.
Yes.
Think about what I'm saying right there. You are the destination. You are the object of it. Now, see, some people say, oh man, we don't want to get people thinking, no, self-centered Christianity. Let me help you with something. I have no ability to love until He has first loved me. It's absolutely impossible. We cannot love until He has first loved us. And there are times in our life where we shouldn't treat that like a doctrine that says, back there at the cross, He loved me, therefore I love, and I don't need to be loved right now. Listen, some of us need a fresh love. We need the freshness of our first love. We need the love of God to just flood our heart again. We just need God to soak us through and wring us out. Because you know what happens is that was my thing years ago when we had soaking sessions. Everybody talked about soaking. And my only concern about soaking sessions was, as I turned to my wife, I said, my only concern for the church is the church would soak so long that it would forget that God promises that after He soaks us, He squeezes us and brings us out. Because if we're soaking with the love of God, He's going to wring us out on people all over our life.
Yes, come on.
That's what He's going to do. That's where it's not a self-centered gospel, but it's an understanding that it is an object of His affection gospel. Because we are the object of the affection of God. Do you believe that? How many of you look around the room right now and you're thinking somebody in this room is loved more than you're loved by God? If you're thinking that, you're wrong. See, Cliff's sitting there, he's going, I'm loved. You don't understand. I'm His favorite. And somebody else is in the room going, who does he think he is, thinking that God's his favorite? Well, He is. He is God's favorite Cliff. There is no Cliff like this Cliff. This is God's favorite Cliff. And you live different when you know who you are. Just look at my son. My son, the other day, we're having fun, right? Let's do it. Let's have fun. The other day, he calls me. He says, Dad, you forgot my lunch. Third time this week. Not good. But Micah doesn't care, because what that means is that I feel guilty, so I'll go where he wants me to go to get him lunch. So I said, hey, I'm at lunch with Carrie. I'm sitting here at Upper Room. What would you like? And he sends me a text, and he says, what I would like is he said, I would like the hoisin chicken salad. So first of all, he's already started off with something bourgeois to just start off the whole thing. Why can he tell his dad that he wants some bourgeois dish?
Because he knows you'll get it.
You'll get it.
Because he knows he's the son that is the object of his father's affection.
Come on.
Amen.
But then I'm thinking that's it, and I look down and there's a ... And can you also get me the beef nachos? And I'm thinking, okay, you're 15, but there ain't no way you're going to eat this. How are you going to eat the beef nachos and the hoisin chicken salad? Because 15, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. But then I started getting mad at him. And I said, gosh, who does he think he is? He's getting entitled. And I started getting kind of, And I was sitting there, you didn't even know I was going through this. And I was sitting there, and here's what the Lord spoke to me. He said, you were the same way. You were the same way with your dad. I would run into our house, if there was a porterhouse steak in the house, in the freezer, I didn't think about who's my dad buying that porterhouse steak or how much you paid for it. If it was in the freezer, it was fair game. And if my buddies and I wanted to cook it and eat it that day, we just threw it on the grill and ate it. And my dad would go buy another porterhouse and he wouldn't say anything to me. Now I'm just telling you my dad. Now some of y'all didn't have a dad like that. You didn't have somebody that made you the object of his affection. But you have a Father in heaven that owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, has no lack. He sits above the heavens. He laughs. He makes the earth his footstool. And God loves you that much. And it hit me is I would do this because it was like, no, if I don't eat the nachos, I'll share them with my friends and everybody will get fat and be happy. Isn't that something about the abundance of God that we realize is that if He gives me more than enough, I'll just share it with everybody else?
Come on.
That's how we should be as Christians. Hey, if I'm blessed, we came in and we bought this house and we were like, this is God's house. And then we had, some prophetical person that comes along. And they said, I see angels all around this room, and God's going to just bring people in this room, and He's just going to fill this place with worship, and it's just going to be worship, and the angels are just going to be all around your house, and it's just going to be this angelic presence all around your house. Ever since then, I have people constantly tell me, it feels like there's angels around your house. It feels like the angelic host is. I said, oh, yeah, right. But you know what hit me? Is I said, Lord, if you gave us this house, then we're going to share this house. And look at the season we've been through, where we've got to share. We're going to keep sharing it. Now, years ago, we went, I'm giving a lot of commentary. Years ago, my wife and I went to a vacation in Lake Shasta. At nighttime, at wintertime, and we were there, and a person gave us, and I want to say this to some of you in the room, the Lord gave us, a friend of ours in Atlanta that hadn't talked to us in 20 years, said, I just had a dream about you last night, and you were in this big house, and all over the house, God had filled it with people that were orphans, and they were being changed into His beloved. They were being changed from thinking they were rejected or second best or orphans, and they were beginning to understand they were adopted and they were God's best. And I literally thought, Susie and I, we're like little 2-year-olds. So we're so literal, we went out and became foster parents. Because we're like, oh, we're just going to have a bunch of foster kids. And then we had a foster kid and found out how hard that was. And then we planted a church while we were doing that. And we realized, God, part of what you were talking about is the spirit of adoption around our life. And that you're going to bring people. And we're just a little piece of what God's going to do. God's going to do this in people's lives. Amen. How many of you understand we need a greater revelation of the love of God? That we, say this with me, I am the destination.
I am the destination. Yes, thank you.
I am the object of His affection.
I am the object of His affection.
What's keeping us from resting in God?
Come on.
What's keeping us from resting in God? How many opportunities have we missed to sit at His feet? We're so busy. And we're busy with things that it's just life.
Yeah.
It's life.
Can you have rest in the midst of the busyness? Let me ask you a question. That's a good question, right? Can you have rest? Can you rest in the midst of the busyness? It's a good question. I think the answer is yes and no. I think the answer is yes, you can have rest in the midst of the busyness. But you can only learn to abide by first getting alone with Him. And so first you have to get a revelation of His love for you and the rest of God. How many in this room, when something needs to be done, you just can't help yourself? Come on. You just can't help yourself. Like you won't push the off switch. You feel guilty if you don't do it. You know, I'm going to say something right now. I'm looking around the room. There's a few men's heads that are nodding, and there are a lot of women's heads that are nodding. What was this story about? 2 brothers? No. The 2 brothers story we had 2 weeks ago was about competition and importance and who's most loved and who has the Father's love. And they were competing for the Father's love. And you'll see this among men. Men will compete. They will compare. They've got this competitive, warring nature in them. Well, they'll do that with each other. And that's how we will do it. But look at how these 2 sisters are doing it this week. Put the comparison out there. And isn't it frustrating when God picks the one that you think shouldn't be picked? This is the 2nd week now we've had that. He's calling the backslidden brother mature son, and he's calling the brother that stayed home and worked immature son. You still don't get it. Hagios, mature son, man-child. And then he looks at the one that stayed home and he calls him technos, baby, immature. You still haven't got a picture of my life. Now we're at Mary and Martha, and God does it to us again. And you know, how many of us are honest? We avoid it. How How many of us will be honest and admit that we avoid this? Who in this room can be a moving target?
I am a moving target.
What about when his mission for you is to sit on your proverbial posterior and be with him? Louder?
Yeah.
Oh, I can get loud. They want us to be loud. You and me. Well, that's not a problem. Go ahead. Your turn to be loud.
You know, as you were saying that, I just kept hearing the word trust.
Come on.
Amen.
Come on.
Mary trusted God because she had been with him and she had spent intimate moments with him.
Yeah.
Martha, she had been with Jesus.
Yeah.
She had done things for Jesus.
Mhm.
She was all about how things appeared, how things looked. But she didn't spend those intimate moments with Jesus that would bring about change and cause her to rest in him. Perhaps maybe she didn't trust him. Maybe she didn't trust him. Maybe things happened where she didn't trust God. We can ask ourselves these same questions. Have things happened in your life where you don't trust God? So it's hard for you to rest in him.
You're an annoying person to us. You're an annoying person to me with this. And I'm gonna tell you why Cordell can be really annoying. Because he's saying when he's struggling to trust God, he's actually feeling like he has the right to say that out loud. God, I'm struggling to trust you. Most of us in this room, we refuse to say that because we think we can't. And so we act like we're trusting him, but we're totally in control and we're totally a moving target. And so our mouth is saying, I trust you, but all of our actions are saying, I'm in control. I'm in control of my family. I'm in control of my spouse. I'm in control of my kids. I'm in control of my job. I'm in control of everything. And then people are telling me I have a need to be in control. And I'm saying, no, I don't have a need to be in control. I'm trusting God. And you know, I mean, even to the point where I've had a couple situations recently where people have been told, hey, you're being controlling, and they say, Pling! They hang up the phone on the other person. That's when you say, I think we struck a nerve.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
When you use guilt, what are you? Controlling. When you try to make people bad because there's something you expect of them, what are you? Come on, you guys.
Controlling.
Right. When you have to take a pot shot when that person's walking out of the room, what are you struggling with?
Control.
Come on.
Come on.
When you have to win the argument. Controlling. She knows. We just have this thing where sometimes it's like, I act like I'm so humble and like I don't need to win, but at the end it's all a game because I want to win. Love you too, babe. Brett. Boom. Say that. Say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying that Mary knew it's an identity and a position issue. It's not Jesus.
It wasn't a problem with Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus is not the
He
problem.
knew who he was.
It's Martha's identity and not knowing her position and where to be placed.
It's good. And
You know, if you know me, I'm actually more comfortable in a house that is not put together
Amen.
than I am in a house where I feel like I can't.
say it.
Can't do that.
I can't be
Touch
myself.
anything.
Oh, dude, do we understand that?
Yeah, that's
Come on, y'all. Do you hear what he just said? where you feel like you can't sit on nothing. You walk in and you can't sit on their couch.
Yeah, been there.
Dude, I remember growing up, I went to this one friend's house. She was a nice lady, but I think she must have grown up in filth and poverty, because you walk in her house and she had this plastic cover over her couch.
And the rug.
And dude, why would you even want to sit on that thing? If you sit on it for 2 minutes, you'd hear your skin go right off of there because it would stink so bad. You couldn't, and they had a room that was a sitting room where you couldn't sit.
I just wanted to say one thing. There's a story. I'm not going to name who the names are, but there's some family members that we have that won't stay at our house because there's a perception of what they feel makes them comfortable, and our relationship with those people in our family is distant. It's not a close relationship.
Because they don't feel at home.
Because they're more about position
Oh.
and they have the false identity of who they really are. And there's a control issue. They're not letting go. They're not trusting. They only trust what they feel comfortable with. And so they lose a relationship.
Right.
And then we have another side of the family that comes and they sleep on the floor. And we are so connected to them. We are in love with them. And they don't care. They just want to come and enjoy our family. It doesn't matter where they sleep. It doesn't matter what their accommodations are. It doesn't even know. It doesn't matter if our house is clean or dirty. They don't even call sometimes and they come home.
That's right.
And we just open the door, and they're like, we forgot to call. We're like, we know how you are. You come into the house all the time without calling. But there's just like
Can people
an
show
open
up?
door
Can
policy with them. And the thing is Mary had that open door policy with Jesus. She had that, I don't care where you go, where you are, how I look, what the condition is. I just want to be with you.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes. Yes. That's
And the
it.
relationship that Jesus had with Mary was deeper than Martha, because Martha wouldn't accept Jesus for who Jesus really was.
Yeah. Yes. Heidi, can I throw this to you or hand it to you? Okay. But we record it, that's why.
This message is for me. You guys been tearing me down and
Gotta hold it up.
thank you, Jesus. Thank you. You're good. But I'm learning that over the next level, he actually wants us out of control.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. I'm reading this book called Birth in the Miraculous by Heidi Baker. It's helped her so much. It's all about resting in that quiet place. And one thing she says is God wants you broken. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what
Yeah.
they're doing. But we run from it. And I just want to say, just don't run from it.
Yeah.
Because that's where he is going to rock your world.
Amen.
If you are in control, you cannot be in control. And it's the hardest thing to give up.
Yeah. It's
I
scary.
didn't realize how much I desperately wanted the Lord. And I needed control. And I was conceding my own
Wow.
desire for Jesus. Because I couldn't give up control. So I just want to encourage you.
You know,
He wants you.
there's a story in the Song of Solomon. Heidi. So funny you connect with the Heidi like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's a story in the Song of Solomon where she goes out to find her beloved. She goes out to find her beloved. And when she goes out to find her beloved, the watchmen in the city begin to beat her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, she's literally going through, Lord, why would I go to pursue you? And then on the way to getting to you,
Yes.
be battered by men.
Come on.
Why is it that I would go after you, but on the way to you, that people would show up and they wouldn't represent you correctly? And in that moment, when they do that, she has a choice to make. She either goes back to her home in her room where he had previously come to her and put his hand in and bid her to come. She either goes back to her safe place, her safe room, her comfort room, or she does what my girlfriend said today, what Tamika says today. She says, I'm going to press through until I get to him because he's different than this.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells them, you don't understand who I am. Look at me, guys. You don't understand who I am. You've just messed with his beloved. You just touched the one that he loves. And we need that fear of the Lord in the church again. Where the way that we handle one another is if I hurt you and I mishandle you, I mishandle the one that he loves. If I don't see you the way God sees you, and I misperceive you, and I wound you, then God has a problem not with you, but with me. But irregardless of what she went through, she realizes something. That God made her go through that. Because he loves us that much to teach us how he loves.
Right.
Just write down what I just said. He loves us that much to teach us how he loves. Because he loves us enough that it says he went to the cross for us that we might be saved and know his love and be his, not just his children, but his betrothed and his bride. Does that make sense what I'm saying right now? So he calls her through the persecution and through this stuff and through the misrepresentation. And she gets to him, and what does she declare? I am my beloved's, and he is mine.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what's his banner?
A love.
His banner over
Banner
his love.
over his love.
Come on, take us home. Drive us home, brother.
He's not like man. He's not like man. He's not like our earthly fathers. He is not like our earthly fathers.
No.
He said he would never leave us or forsake us. God, we thank you, God, for your unfailing love. We thank you, God, for your unfailing love. Come on, all over this place, just begin to thank him for his unfailing love towards us. When we felt so broken and so alone, he's always been there.
These places, you gotta take these broken places.
Jesus.
You gotta take these broken places, Jesus.
Oh, God.
Yes, God. Let's just stand.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes, Jesus, all over the room.
God, let us find rest in you. God, let us trust you, God. God, thank you for the brokenness, God. God, thank you for the crushing, God. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah, Jesus. Lord, I'm amazed by you.
Just tell him yes.
Lord, I'm amazed. Oh, Jesus. I'm amazed by you. That you love me. I'm amazed by you. Oh God, you amaze me. you love me. Thank you, Jesus. I am amazed by you. God, you love me when I couldn't even love myself. I'm amazed, I'm amazed, I'm amazed by you. That you love little old me. Hallelujah. Thank you, God, for your love. Thank you, God, for your love. Your love found me. Your love found me. Hallelujah, Jesus. God, I'm amazed by you, Jesus. Hallelujah, Jesus.
You know, today everything in this whole place is an altar. You know, if you've been fighting God, or you know that God's been calling you to his feet, and you've been too busy, and you're saying, God, forgive me for just letting distraction come and getting too busy. God, God, in the midst of all of my busyness right now, I just set myself aside to you. And God, I declare that I am the destination of your affection. God, that I am the destination of your affection, that I am loved by you, that without you I can do nothing, and apart from you I can do nothing. God, I just pray for each one of us in this room today, God, that you would just free us, Father, from getting caught in busyness and weariness and control. God, that you would literally just free us, God. Father, call us to a more intimate place in you, God. Father, so we're like the disciples. It says that they looked at them and they were ignorant and unlearned men, but they realized that they had been with Jesus. God, that we just want to be with you, Jesus. God, we just want to be in your presence where we're changed. God, we just want to get close to you, God. Father, get the orphan out of us, God. Father, get the runner out of us, God. Father, get the dodgy thing out of us, God. Father, get that thing out of us, God, today. God, we want to just be free. God, to just sit at your feet and love you. God, we give you the Martha in us today, God. God, we give you the Martha in us today, God. And God, we want to be those, God, that press through and sit at your feet, God. Lord, that we want to press through to the place of rest. It says warring to enter in to his rest. So God, we press through to your rest today, God. Father, we press through our flesh. God, we press through the fear that says you've got to do so much, be so busy, exhaust yourself to the point where you're ground to powder, God. God, we want to learn to just be at your feet and be your child and your beloved and the object of your affection, God. Oh, God, we love you, Jesus. You are our everything. You are our everything, Jesus. I'm going to say something today. The Bible says, and that morning when after Jesus had died and he had been placed in the tomb, it says, and Mary of Bethany ran up ahead of him and came to the tomb first. And I want to say this to you. There's a reason that God is calling us to be Marys and to be at his feet. And the reason is, one of the reasons, I'm sure there's many, is because when the worst moment is there in other people's lives, when the darkest moment is there, only a Mary will show up and be ready. Only a Mary will get there quicker than everybody else. A Mary will be there and she'll just be at his feet right there in the tomb. Even if they're his cold, dead feet. Even if they're his cold, dead feet, I say, Jesus, no matter what, I'm committed to you. And I'm at your feet, God. Even if it's not working out the way that I want it to work out, God, I give myself to you because where I belong, God, is I belong the feet of God. That's just where the beloved belong, is at the feet of God. Oh God, we just want to be at your feet. God, we don't need another conference right now. We don't need that right now. We need a confrontation. We need a place, God, where we are at your feet, God, where we are just being with you and you're speaking afresh to us, oh God. Oh Jesus. Oh Jesus. I want you to do something. If you're with your spouse or your significant other, I want you to put your hand on them. If you're here and you're single, I want somebody else to put your hand. I want you to just pray for that person right now, that God would break all of the Martha off and that he would release the sweet oil, the sweet fragrance of the Mary. Remember, it was two Marys that came to the feet of Jesus. Again, back at the feet, there's Mary at the feet of Jesus again. And she takes the alabaster box and she breaks it at his feet because she knows she belongs at his feet. This is where Marys belong, at the feet of God. She takes the most precious thing she has and she breaks it at his feet because it's all about his feet. God, I sit before you right now. God, break us, God. God, give us to take our most precious things, God. Father, we give you, God, everything, God. Oh, God, we give you our crowns. It says that the 4 and 20 elders, they came before him and they cast their crowns. Where did they cast them, Cordell? At his feet, God. We just cast it all at your feet. Even our accomplishments, we cast them at your feet, God. Everything at your feet, God. We come to your feet today, Jesus. Oh, how beautiful are the feet of him that brings good news. You know what happens when you get to his feet? You start acting like the one. You start living like the one. You start being like the one that you came to the feet of. Who do you make Lord is who you become like. Who you make Lord is who you become like. God, you are our everything. God, a long time ago, some of us need to pray that. God, a long time ago, I gave my life to you. I didn't give it to men. God, I didn't give it to things. I didn't give it to jobs. I didn't give it to careers. God, I gave my life to you. And I laid my life afresh at your feet today, Jesus. I lay my life at your feet, God. I give you all that I am. Forgive me, God, for I've held back me. I've been giving you all of this action, but I've been holding me back. And all this time, all you wanted was me. Oh, God, all you wanted was me. Oh, God, all you want is us. All you want is our children. God, you want the people in this community. You want the folks in this Bay Area, God. God, we pray for a revival at your feet. Can we just pray together right now? God, we pray for a revival, a spiritual awakening at the feet of God. God, we pray for something to break forth, not, God, in some kind of show or somebody on a stage, but God, we pray, God, that there would be a spiritual breakthrough and awakening that would happen in this Northern California at the feet of God, that it would be at the feet of God, at the feet of Jesus. God, that there would be an awakening. God, that we would stand up from the feet of Jesus and carry it all over. Carry the beloved, carry the love of God all over our life. God, we just thank you right now, Jesus. We just thank you right now, God. Come on, let's give them our distractions. Distractions. Let me say it again. Distractions. Distractions are disattractions, things you're naturally attracted to, but they dis you from God. They take you away from God. Distractions. God, help us, God, not to go after the shiny things, but to just go after Jesus.
Yes. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord.
Not to go after the disattraction of the praises of men, but to go after under the feet of the one we love.